4 minutes until showtime. 3 minutes until showtime. 2 minutes until showtime. 1 minute until showtime. 'Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. That is 914-803-4131. Just make sure to leave your area code in the chat
in the YouTube chat just to make sure I know it is you who is calling. Or you can also leave comments and questions in the chat, and I will get to them as soon as I can. If you're listening after the live broadcast, you could always leave your comments, questions, concerns, etc. over in the show thread at liberaldan.com, over on Twitter at Liberal Dan Radio on Twitter, or here on YouTube on the show thread as well. Let's see. Megan would have done very well on Jeopardy yesterday. That's awesome. Cool. You know, there's sometimes I watch Jeopardy and I always think like, oh, I would have done awesome on this one. I probably would have frozen maybe and not done as well. There are some times that, you know, it's just, I would have aced certain ones, of course, and I would be there and it would be like all these subjects that I have no clue about. Of course, the thing about Jeopardy is many times the questions have like a secondary hint that kind of, you know, give it away, where, you know, there's the primary hint, then there's kind of a secondary hint where it's like, you know, here it is. At least on most things, at least that's what I found. So even things, even questions where you might not know the subject overall, where it might be like, oh, you can make your best guess. Anyway, so the topic today is the anti-trans agenda. You know, there's always talk by the conservatives about the horrors of the trans agenda and the agenda of the LGBTQA movement, and how they're coming after your kids and they're groomers and they're pedophiles and they're trying to, you know, make your kids, you know, turn gay or turn trans or whatever. And, you know, just remember, whenever discussing any of these topics, the most important thing you have to remember is the fact that almost every conservative accusation ends up being a confession. Because, you know, conservatives, oh, they're grooming. Oh, but look at Matt Gaetz and all of his suspicious activities with the youths that look very hinky, so to speak. Look at all the other, you know, things, you know, the voting fraud, and then it turns out all these Republicans and conservatives get arrested and convicted of committing election fraud, voting twice, using their mail-in ballots or what have you. I guess they want to prove that see, look, we do it all the time, so it's fraudulent. But, you know, it's the Democrats that are really doing it, even though there's no evidence to prove that those claims are true. But before we start talking about all the topics I want to talk about today when it comes to that, let's go over lots of stuff we're happening today. I agree, Aaron Jolie is very amazing, as are you. The mod squad, both very amazing, as is, you know, all the listeners of Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from the Left, that's right. All the patrons, all the supporters, everyone who's bought me cider, everyone who subscribes. It is my birthday month. My birthday is May 20th, and I'm trying to say, hey, you know, let's try and push it over 1,000. I don't think at this point, even if I do get to 1,000, I'm not quite yet going to be monetized, because I think the first 2 Hal shows from last year were a really significant boost. That's why I'm trying to produce some extra videos. I'm trying to push out maybe a Fat Man rant every week, maybe try and get, you know, some working on those extra videos that I want to create in order to make sure that I have extra views that are out there. So it's very important, if you want to help me get to 1,000, to not just kind of, hey, you know, friends, go subscribe, go make sure to subscribe to these videos, but also, you know, share the videos as well, especially if the ones that you think are good. You know, I have made a couple of extra Fat Man rants. Hey, Seha. Hey, Kimchi. It's my unbirthday today. Today's my unbirthday. May 20th is my birthday. So, but yeah, I want to get to 1,000 by my birthday, and I did tell Hal's chat. I have told Hal's chat that once I do hit 1,000, I'm gonna make it rain. I guess not subscriptions, but memberships over there in his YouTube chat. And I might even drop him an extra Venmo contribution just as a thanks for the fact that he was on my show has, you know, boosted my show's popularity, which is making me more likely to get monetized, but I'm not there yet. But I really would love to get there, because then I can start getting, you know, subscriptions. I could start getting super chats, etc., and that would make the show, I think, even more popular. And then I think at that point we'll start snowballing. So, Jeff Curry, imagine if they saw a homeless immigrant trans woman wearing, not just an immigrant, an undocumented immigrant, because I'm not going to use their words, but an undocumented trans woman immigrant wearing a mask, holding about it. I don't understand why they get so angry at other people wearing a mask. They get so triggered when somebody like wears a mask. They get so angry. Like, if I was feeling really sick and I felt like I was like perhaps contagious, like, I would wear a mask. And not because it would trigger a conservative, although that might be a bonus side effect of me wearing a mask, that I would be walking by a conservative and they might be all angry. But the fact that they just get so angry. And like, I don't understand the whole Bud Light thing. It doesn't make any sense. Like, they're selling products. It would be like back in the 40s. Like, if they had a commercial, like on the radio, and you had like the oldie time voice, like, Bud Lights, drink Bud Lights, it's good for the white people, or whatever. And then like they had a commercial on, like, 2 days later, black people like to drink Bud Light too. And all of a sudden they'd be like, how dare they start advertising to the black people? We revolt. We can't drink the same beer that they do. Like, it's ridiculous. Why wouldn't you want to have an increased market share? It's like, you've betrayed us, Bud Light. How dare you pay someone else to advertise your goods to another segment of the population? Like, it's crazy. And a BLM shirt, yes. BLM and Antifa. Don't forget Antifa, because Antifa, that's the worst. They're out to get you. But not a Blue Lives Matter shirt, but an FBI. Maybe like I support the FBI shirt, because they love blue lives, but not the FBI. They want to defund the FBI, but they don't want to defund the police, because cops are okay by them as long as they're killing black people. But if they're arresting white people for doing crimes, a sin. It's terrible. Yeah, they're only mad about masks until white supremacists wear them and terrorize us. Exactly. So today we got another shooting going on. Active Atlanta shooter, I've supposedly captured 57 minutes ago. WSB Atlanta says the shooter was arrested. Supposedly Moscow is claiming that there were explosions above the Kremlin, and that they were a Ukrainian attempt to kill Vladimir Putin. And if you believe that, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you. Nobody believes that. Like, I don't think there's anybody who is sane who believes that. So obviously Tucker Carlson will believe it. I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will believe it. All of the crazies on Twitter who want to free the January 6th crowd will probably believe it. Who else? Who else will believe it? Vivek Ramaswamy will probably believe that it was Ukraine. Anybody else on OAN and Real American Voice, I'm sure they'll all believe the Kremlin propaganda, that it was just, I'm sure Jeff Craer would believe Moscow's line or whatever. Looks like the civil rape trial for Trump is wrapping up, and I don't know what they're thinking. Donald Trump's gonna, actually I think I do know what they're thinking. Here's what Donald Trump's defense attorney, and Donald Trump himself, is thinking. Donald Trump's going to lose the case. The jury's going to award her a bunch of money. Donald Trump's going to appeal the verdict. And like, whatever appeals court in the state of New York is going to say, oh no, you're going to pay this money. And then whatever is going to go to the New York Supreme Court. And the New York Supreme Court, even though they're a little, I guess, friendlier to conservatives because they overturned the gerrymandered map, because they want to be fair to conservatives, even though other states are not fair to liberals, they'll probably uphold the verdict. And then it'll go to the Supreme Court, and then his Supreme Court that he installed half of will probably be like, oh no, this is not a good ruling. It's overturned for whatever reason. They'll probably be like, you can't just say after the fact that you can sue them after the statute of limitations on the civil things ran out, simply because you wanted to change the law after the fact. So we're going to overturn the ruling because reasons. And then they'll overturn the ruling and Trump won't owe any money. And because he has the Supreme Court in his pocket. And that's how Donald Trump will end up owing no money, because the Supreme Court is in his pocket. So let's see. Iran seized a second oil tanker in the Gulf. Lovely. Politico reports that a national test score show a decline in history and civics proficiency. I wonder why. I wonder what states are showing the most decrease. Anybody want to bet which states show the highest decrease in civics proficiency? If they report, I don't know if this story will report it because I haven't read this story yet. I'm just kind of going through the news. I would probably bet that they're red states. I would probably bet that Florida is probably the worst state of this, if not maybe Alabama or Mississippi, maybe Texas. It's got to be a red state. Maybe Kansas, Wyoming. Hey, Elizabeth. Hey, MJ. Hey, Kimchi. I don't know if I said hi to Kimchi yet. Hey, Jeff. Let's see. Boom, 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 boom. Let's see. Poor performance. Abysmal math and reading scores, blah, 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 blah. Key contacts, average history marks have fallen for nearly a decade. Scores dropping 9 points since 2014, from 267 to 258 out of a possible 500. I am not seeing anything in this link, in this article, that's specifically, let's see. We're going to click over to this link and see if this link happens to show, if it comes up at all. Let's let this load. We'll continue looking at the other stuff. The banks are failing. Here's one thing I think about the banks. The bank fails, and the banks are insured. I guess each account is assured. So then the accounts wind up getting, I don't know, sold to, like, one of the big banks. And I don't like that. I don't think that's good. I don't think they should just hand off the customers or the accounts to just the big banks, because then you're just making bigger banks that are riskier to fail. I think you should say, hey, here's an account. Here's a code. You have this account, and we're going to label your account with some code. Here's your account code. And you can go to any bank you want to, and you can give them your code, and you can then deposit that into that bank. And so then any bank could then give you incentives to use that code at that bank and say, okay, here you go. This is why you should deposit this code, your protected money into our bank. And maybe they'll be like, hey, we'll give you a deposit bonus. Hey, we'll give you this. Hey, we'll give you that. And you'll have many banks fighting over your money. And maybe you just want to support a local community bank, or maybe you want to support a black-owned bank, or maybe you want to support, maybe you have a bank that you like that you wanted that has other money that you want to put it in, or maybe you already have. Maybe you already have the maximum amount of money that's insured by the FDIC in the bank that they've chose to put it in, so you'd rather put it in a different bank so that you have that money protected in a different bank. Don't just hand it away to the whatever big bank. Just give you the choice to put it in whatever bank you want, and allow the money to spread out so it doesn't create a giant mass of risk in one. Don't put all your chickens in one. Or don't put your eggs in one basket. Don't put all your chickens in one pot. I was mixing my metaphors, I guess. So, and I don't weep when the banks fail, but I think you're creating another potential disaster by taking all of this money and just shoving it into one bank. Let it spread out. With investments, you're supposed to diversify your risk, right? So why not diversify the risk when you're taking this money from a failed bank? Just diversify that risk out and spread it across the country. No risk for 98% of the country. We live paycheck to paycheck. No, that's also true. Well, a local New Orleans story that's interesting. We have this building called the Plaza Tower. It's been out of commission since Katrina, 2005, and like it's an eyesore. It hasn't been used since then. The only time I've ever seen it be used, there was like an episode of NCIS New Orleans where somebody was being held hostage in it, so they filmed in it. Maybe they used it for one or two other things for filming, but other than that, it's never been used. It's falling apart. They had to put, I think a piece of the building fell on a bicyclist and injured the bicyclist, so they had to put some netting on it. Like, if you see like sporting events from New Orleans, and they'll show like a view of the skyline, and it'll show like all of the, the Superdome and the Smoothie King Center where they play basketball, and you'll see all these lit up buildings and this one black tower in the middle that has no power. Like, it's ugly, it's an eyesore, and they've been trying to figure out what to do with it forever. Like, the first time the Powerball hit like $1 billion, I was like, man, if I won the Powerball and I got $1 billion, I'd love to just buy it and like turn it into like a big like personal tower and have it be like my tower, and then I develop it, all sorts of different things or whatever. Obviously that never happened, but I was like, that would have been fun, but clearly it has a lot of work to do. Thank you, MJ. I appreciate you. You're awesome. Thank you so much. I just saw it. So the my idea, and I ended up tweeting this at the city and at the mayor, is that maybe it's not a great idea now because we have the writer's strike that's impending, but why not just contact Hollywood and be like, hey, we have this giant building. If you have a movie that you want to have a big gigantic building just be toppled in it, maybe you just needed a big explosion to topple a building, or I don't know if you want to have a plane hit a giant tower. That's probably not a good idea since 9/11, but whatever. Like, what you want to have something just big explode, and maybe like an Independence Day type thing where an alien comes down and just obliterates a building, and you don't even have to use CGI. You could just explode it, and then you handle the explosives, you handle the cleanup, you have fun, destroy it, demolish it, have fun, and then we don't have to deal with it anymore. It goes away, and maybe we'll handle the cleanup of it or whatever, but hey, we get rid of the eyesore, we get rid of the danger around us. They had to close the street because pieces are falling. That's the kind of outside of the buy it and turn it into the country's largest pot dispensary. That would be amazing. I have a suspected spam call. That will be hung up on. So that would be amazing. Well, it's big enough where not only could you have it be a dispensary, if it was like, an intact building that it would be safe to be in. Imagine, like, it's very tall. I mean, like, at least 50 stories, maybe. Let's see. How tall is the Plaza Tower in New Orleans? Let's look that up. How tall is the Plaza Tower in New Orleans? I finished it for me. Look at that. 45 story. I was 5 stories off. 531 foot skyscraper in New Orleans. So, and there's a parking garage too. Imagine how many floors of just hydroponic pot growing that could happen in that. And then you could have like maybe the first 40 levels of that. And then the first 5 levels could be like an amazing weed store or something. That would be great. That would be amazing. You could make bank off of that. Unfortunately, I don't think the laws allow for that currently. I think you have to have specific growers are allowed to grow medicinal marijuana, I think, at this point. I don't know if they've changed that rule at this point or not. I don't know. Let's see. Of course, we've got the lawmaker in Montana who still can't go to the House floor. A judge rejected her efforts to go to the House floor because Republicans, this I guess goes to the, this is part of the anti-trans agenda. I guess we can start talking about that. Zoe Zephyr, we talked about that a little bit last week. She was ousted by the Republican controlled chamber. Now here, I was listening to Jeff Carrera's show this morning, and there's like an hourly news thing that runs. The hourly news thing actually said that Zoe Zephyr was prohibited from going to the legislative floor because she threatened the legislators. She didn't threaten the legislators. Not one bit. She said the legislators had blood on their hands because of the actions they were taking, because they're making it more likely that the trans youth and the trans people in general in their state would commit suicide. That's what she meant. And for them to say that they were threatened, again, just these conservatives are just snowflakes. Absolute snowflakes. Hey, Gibson Media, what's up? You came in just in time for the anti-trans agenda part. So, again, she's a duly elected representative. She deserves to be on the floor. And they're being ridiculous. But again, modern day conservatives serving in the legislatures and in governorships all over. Yeah, she threatens them by making them uncomfortable in their own hate. Exactly. Very good point, Jamie. Governorships, legislatures have an anti-trans agenda. Let's go ahead and look at some of the things that, I've been looking at Twitter recently. So, new thing I set up. Ding. All right. So let's look at this image that was created. It was part of a blog post. And this is from North Carolina about like SB 639 or whatever, something that they want to pass, HB 808. Looking at Duke, UNC, and ECU health. Supposedly, according to this blog post, we got a caller calling in. I'll get to you, caller, in a second. Accordingly, it says Duke Health. According to this thing, this Duke Health says that at 2 years old, according to this image, that you can start transitioning. Of course, I disbelieve. I absolutely disbelieve. Let me see if I can pull it up. Duke Health district. So gender care for transition and adolescence. So this is the Duke Health page. When a child's sense of who they are doesn't match their physical sexuality, blah, 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 blah. This is just... This is part of it, but this isn't the article. That's not the article I found. Hold on. The article I found was in the it's this. This is the article that the blog post that was talking about it. Here we go. Transgender toddlers treated at Duke, UNC, and ECU. And this is what I mean, that why decorum is just not just a part of modern day conservatism in this country. Like if you've seen my new video, my new Fat Man rant on dead naming, I talk about that a lot, where about using people's pronouns, using people's correct names. It's not something that is often seen in the modern Republican Party in conservatism today. Now, I'm not saying that all conservatism, but a lack of decorum is pervasive. Okay, so Duke Medicine has created a new gender clinic to provide a wide variety of services under one roof to children and teens dealing with gender issues. These can range from issues with genitalia that hasn't properly developed, to issues with going through puberty, to even helping transgender kids and teens. Here's the services that have proven to help one rally family. I don't want to have that played. Shut up. So you're not going into this clinic. You're not going into this clinic as a 2-year-old to start transitioning. That's not what this is about. You might go into this clinic as a 2-year-old if you have malformed genitals. Or maybe you might have to deal with, like, Klinefelter syndrome. Or maybe if as you're getting older and maybe you're having to deal with puberty and you have some puberty issues that might be dealt with because maybe you have some hormone imbalance or something. Yes, this clinic also deals with teens who may be dealing with trans issues, or maybe you might have an 8 or a 9-year-old who might be questioning their body. Maybe they're having some gender dysphoria. Maybe they're dealing with that, and so maybe they have some psychologists on staff to deal with that. Maybe, but not 2 years old. They're not transitioning kids at 2 years old. So why would anybody believe these people? I mean, the lie goes halfway around the world before the truth even gets up. So that's first of all. But I don't even go bother to read anything about the UNC Health or anything about the ECU Health, because why would I bother? Because they've already misled you about the Duke Health. So why would I assume that they're telling the truth about the other two? Because they're liars. They've already lied. Well, okay. Maybe they're just dumb and just assumed something and didn't bother to read it. And as such, if they didn't bother to read it, they just made an assumption and they believed it to be true. But they're still presenting false information and they're unreliable. Either way, they're not a reliable source. So why would I bother trusting this person or that blog ever again? It doesn't make any sense. All right, let's go to the phones before we go to the next topic about that. Hola.
Hola.
Hey,
My
what's
name's
up?
Khalil. I've called in here before.
Yeah,
How
I know.
you doing?
What's up, Khalil? I recognize your phone number.
Yeah, I don't like the phony things that the right wing do as far as actually pretending to care about children.
Right.
I don't like how they support. I'm not against spanking, but I'm against like beating them for crying and spanking them till they're bruised.
Mm-hmm.
They basically exploit the fact that people are callous. Like, I know that I'm gonna get to this point to where they go to transgender things,
Mm-hmm.
but people will say kids are bad nowadays, but that doesn't mean that we need to just throw them away and forget and have like positive discipline. And the right wing exploits that type of stuff, just like they're exploiting the gay people.
Mm-hmm.
And then they use the women and the children to go against the LGBTQ, and it's really disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you don't care about someone when it comes to actual issues, don't pretend to care. It's like they need to stop doing that.
Well, exactly. Like take into consideration, the other day I was listening to a conservative talk show in the morning, and they were, why aren't the feminists standing up for the women when it comes to women's sports, about the whole trans women competing in women's sports? And like in Louisiana, I don't know how many trans women are competing in like high school women's sports. It's probably none, or maybe it's 1 or 2. I don't know. But don't tell me that you care about women and then pass a draconian law that won't even allow a woman to save, or anybody who's pregnant, to save their own lives if they're ready to have a life-threatening pregnancy. Because Louisiana law is just as bad as Texas's law. Even worse, I think.
Yes. James Dobson and Dave Daubenmire are like that too. They pretend to care about children, which it burns me up. Like one thing, Trey Crowder, the liberal redneck,
right?
He said, y'all talk about protecting women and children, but y'all will abuse a kid or support abusing a kid with a coat hanger. But then as soon as it comes to trans people, y'all act like y'all care.
Right.
And it pisses me off.
No, it pisses me off too because they don't care. They're just political pawns. They're just they pretend to care about these trans kids, but their policies make these trans kids more likely to kill themselves. And
Yeah.
and then some of them, one of them even said that she would have rathered her trans kid kill herself than become trans, than transition. Like one of them even said that on one of these legislative floors. It's like, so you don't care about these people at all. Like, they don't care about the harm that they're doing. And literally, that trans person had her own child's blood on her hands because she refused to treat her child with love and respect, and instead treated her as if she was like a monster.
Yeah, it's the same thing with kids, period. They don't, the right doesn't care about kids.
No.
Until it comes to using them as pawns.
Right.
Like actual things like child abuse legislation. I'm not talking about like people that spank their kids. I'm talking about like if you've read James Dobson's manuals, he's one of those people that pretends to care about kids, but he talks anything that tries to use children, actually other children besides trans children, as pawns against LGBTQ people. He'll use them as pawns too.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, they're all. The ultra Christian types just spare the rod, spoil the child. You know, they absolutely support, you know, beating your kids. You know, these people they want to bring back corporal, you know, punishment in schools. They want to bring back paddling and other forms of beating in schools because the kids were much better back then. Says who? Like, you know,
yeah.
You know, they have a lot of bad takes based off of the whole good old days and how things were wonderful back then. Well, things were wonderful for certain people back then, but not for everybody. That's for darn sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I'm not against spanking, but I'm against what these right wingers are doing as far as exploiting people who want to abuse kids. Because there are people that will use the kids are bad nowadays thing to justify being cruel to kids. And that's the thing. And like people like James Dobson are both pandering to not only homophobic people, but he's pandering to people like that. And that's why when I'd be like, do you actually care? Because it's the same. They treat children and they treat women like they're pawns as well.
Right. Well,
just like
conservatism is a movement for old white men, and everybody else is for use for their political purposes. And the more they could use the people, the better. And what's even better is they're great gaslighters because they convince people that what they're pushing is good for them too. And like, you know, they'll convince black people that, you know, welfare and any sort of government assistance is somehow slavery. And, you know, they'll use quotes like, oh, if you're on welfare and food stamps, you're living on the plantation or whatever. And it's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's ridiculous. Like, you know, they don't understand that, you know, they created the system that's keeping people impoverished, and then they want to keep them more impoverished and keep them. They don't want to give them a hand up. They want to keep the foot on their necks. So,
yeah, they want to deny racism.
Huh?
That's the thing. They want to deny racism. I've called like people out for that. I called people out for denying racism and then telling us about what's good for us.
Right. It's ridiculous. So I mean,
you know, it's like don't pretend to care. It's like I don't like people. I'd rather someone straight out not care for me. I don't want someone to pretend to care.
Right. Elizabeth in the chat goes, do they want pre-antibiotics and blood plasma the good old days? Well, yeah. I mean, some libertarian woman on Twitter was like, we were better off before the 19th Amendment or something, or that we shouldn't have had the 19th Amendment or something. And Coulter also was like, we shouldn't have had the 19th Amendment, which granted women's suffrage. Candace Owens was like, name one thing that good that happened after women's suffrage, and the first thing I named that was good that happened after women's suffrage was postnatal care and infant mortality rates dropped. There were less children dying after birth after women got the vote. because now politicians had to listen to the women who were saying, we need these things to keep our children healthy. And so you had increased funding by Congress to fund like better hygiene programs, which they funded things to go door to door and help teach people and help allow people to get, to be more clean in their homes and to help people, keep their children clean and which eliminated a lot of bacteria, a lot of disease, which caused a lot of children to stay alive when they were babies. And so that was one of the good things that happened from women's suffrage, not beyond just the fact that women were allowed to actually have their voices heard, but,
Yeah.
Candace
Yeah,
Owens
I called it out too.
Yeah.
I called it out too because I said, don't sit there and deny things like what happened with Trayvon Martin, deny what we're going through, and deny Africans are part of black people, and then turn around and use us to go against LGBT immigrants and women. I said, don't do that. I said, if you're going to not care about me, don't pretend to care. It's like, don't spit in my face. That's what I told her on her Facebook page.
Right.
And I'll tell anybody out there wants to use me as a pawn and then not actually care.
I don't think caring is a word that they understand, honestly.
Yeah.
All right, well, man, thank you, Khalil, again for calling in. I appreciate you. And any week, anytime you want to call in, love to have you, man. Have a good one.
Thank you, sir. You too. All
right, bye-bye. All right, Khalil, everybody.
Bye.
Khalil, regular caller. Love to have you call in. So let's look at the next one that I was looking at on Twitter. So we have this one, gays against groomers. Now, do I believe that this site is actually run by gay people? I don't know. Again, maybe this is like a Candace Owens type situation where, she'll play up to the people to try and make everybody love her, even though, they don't probably really won't love her back. But so they have this thing. Apparently it's masturbation month, or whatever month that was. This was posted was masturbation month. I mean, every month is masturbation month if you believe in yourself, right? But and this website is like puberty curriculum, and of course they don't give a link to the website. They never give links. They always just give screenshots, and they never give links so you can go and read this. So you have to. If you really want to try and see what the hell they're talking about, you have to hunt it down because they never do it for you. They're like, do your own research. So at first I couldn't find it because at first I found like the page and I found their curriculum. I found the synopsis of their curriculum, and it was like, I was like, I couldn't find anything referring that said anything about masturbation, like nothing whatsoever. And especially with these two, who I would probably say are I would say these kids are 6 or 7 at the most. I don't know. I don't know. I can't say how old these kids are. And I say like puberty, the wonder years, and I started thinking, what would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me? Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song. And I'll try not to sing out of key, even though I just did. Anyway, so I finally found a page where they were talking about, like, masturbation month and how, adolescents, encouraging you as adults to talk to your adolescents about how masturbation is normal if they didn't, how some children will do it and it's normal, and some children won't do it and it's normal and it's fine. Nothing about kids that look like this. Nobody on that website that I could find was saying anything about talk to your 6-year-olds about wanking. But of course, even these people who are the type of people who are like, let's remove the T from the LGBT, just make it LGB, even though these people are probably also want to remove the B, because they're probably bi-erasure people too, but I'm not going to get into that part. But I can probably do a little better Joe Cocker imitation, but still a little bit of a sore throat. I mean, though, maybe, I could still probably do Louis Armstrong, but I don't know. Probably need to be a little more raspy with the Joe Cocker. But yeah, like, there's true evil afoot. What they say, it's true evil. But nobody's saying it's masturbation month for kids. The only places where the 4 words are in the same sentence is on this post. It's like, it's more lies by these fools, these idiots who are trying to manipulate you into being anti-trans because they're trying to make you afraid of trans people and trying to make you think that the people that are trans are groomers and pedophiles because they want to make them into scapegoats and make you afraid of them so they can do things and make you afraid of them and then maybe, lock them up or something like that. Let's get to this caller as well. I don't know. Is this Gibson Media? Hello?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm getting good at recognizing the phone numbers. So what's going on, man?
Well, I mean, I don't know what your take is on this transgender issue, and talk of all this is a distraction from a lot of things, but we don't have to get into that. But the fact of the matter is it's a mental disorder. You're not born that way. It's just like homosexuality. You're not born a homosexual. You're not born a lesbian. It's definitely a learned behavior, and it's a mental problem that has to be treated, and treated the right way. Am I saying that they should be shunned in society and put into a corner someplace? No. But, every human being has a right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, But at the same time, we have to admit the problem, analyze the problem, and be honest with ourselves what the problem is, and not be worried about hurting people's feelings.
I 100% disagree with you. I 100% disagree. I understand that you are. I believe that you are coming from a religious place. I mean, you went to a religious college. Didn't you study
theology school?
Theology school. Yeah, you went to theology school. So I mean, I think that shaped you a little bit. I'm sure you were probably raised that way as well, right? To believe.
No.
Okay.
No. I came from a broken home, actually. So
okay.
My parents were divorced, so no.
Oh, I mean, my parents are divorced too, but I mean, I don't know. That didn't affect me.
Yeah.
But I did go to religious school, but I was not raised to believe that either. I mean, I've seen kids from that were really young that I looked at that just something about them was like, that kid's gonna grow up and that kid is probably not gonna be straight when that kid grows up, and it's just.
Now wait a second. That's a very very hard line to take. To look at somebody just because they act a certain way and assume that they're going to be gay. I mean, you're stereotyping that person.
Maybe. I mean, but in the particular case, I was right. But I didn't try and divert the kid any other way, or I didn't try and do anything about it. It was just a hunch, and my hunch happened to be right. But.
That's fair.
I don't consider it to be a disorder. Even if what you call a disorder, which I disagree with, I don't think it is. But if it's a disorder, it would be something from birth. So it would be something you're born with. Now I disagree with it that it's a disorder. Now, there are some people who are now. I've had a friend of mine who I met online. Her name's Evie Winters. If you look back at some of my previous podcasts, I think I've only have one of them on YouTube. I think I have both of them are on Blog Talk Radio, but only one of them's on YouTube. The second one on YouTube. I think it's right around the same time I had Hal Sparks on for the second time as well. The show's called Evie Winters 2 Electric Boogaloo. And Evie Winters is a trans activist, and I've had her on, and we've talked about the idea that, just because there are definitely trans people who have dysphoria, but there are trans people who don't. You don't have to have dysphoria to be trans. But yes, there are trans people with dysphoria, and dysphoria is a disorder, is a disorder listed in the DSM, and there are people who go to see psychologists for their dysphoria, and they, part of the way that they treat the dysphoria is many times people going through the transition, so they don't have to deal with the dysphoria anymore, because part of the issue is the fact is that they don't feel right within the body as is. So,
so you start going through the natural phases of life, puberty, or whatever have you, or whatever a woman goes through when they become a woman.
Puberty. It's puberty too. Women go through puberty. It's different, but women still go through puberty.
Yeah, okay, but it's different for them. But yeah, okay. But they start having questions about their feeling or how they're feeling. Now that maybe they don't fit in with their social crowd, so now they become withdrawn from their peers, and now they say, well, I'm gay, or you know what, I want to be. I feel more comfortable with my girlfriend than I do a guy, and now they start experimenting, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm a lesbian. No, that's a learned behavior. That's learned now. And I've seen that happen throughout when I was in high school. Girls that maybe not been as good looking as others, they were reserved and felt more comfortable hanging out with other girls. I've seen that. We all have. Come on.
Well, I don't think that's the correct way to look at it, though. See, when I would see that, because there's not just straight and gay. There's not just or straight and lesbian. There's there are people who happen to be there might be people who are who might be like hetero romantic but bisexual, or there might be people who are who might be attracted to many guys but a few women, or many women and a few guys. Like I know of I know some people who are mostly lesbian but like a guy every once in a while. Like there's all different sorts. It's not as cut and dry, I think, as you're trying to make it seem. Are there people who might experiment with something because they might be interested in maybe trying something? Maybe, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a disorder or something's wrong with them. It might just be maybe they're just hedonistic or something. Maybe there's just something that there's all sorts of different ways to express people's sexuality. Not everything is necessarily as cut and dry, and maybe this should be something. I've been toying around with the idea of making a separate YouTube channel. Maybe I'll do it after I hit my 1,000 subscribers on this one, of having a kind of a liberal Dan After Dark where we go more in depth on sexuality issues, and we talk more in depth about these things, and do a more in-depth talk about such things, because I don't want to get too adult on this discussion. So I'm probably going to stop this discussion at this point on this issue, because I want to get back to the whole anti-trans things. But I think. But one thing though, I just want to mention this one thing. As far as the sports thing goes, okay, you have the women's sports, men's sports. Why not have a transgender league also? Why not, where they can all compete with each other? Why not? What, trans men and trans women? Yeah, why not? Well, I mean, there's like, for example, there was an issue one time in Texas where there was a trans man, and just so anybody who's listening who might not know, because this always confuses a lot of people who I have this discussion with. Trans men are people who are assigned female at birth and who feel like they are men. So this young trans man was in wrestling, and because this person was assigned female at birth, was forced to wrestle in the young women's division in high school. Wanted to wrestle the men because trans man. They wouldn't allow him to do that. So he wrestled the women, and he destroyed every one of them. But they wouldn't let him wrestle the men. Right? So,
Which you think is wrong, correct? You think that's wrong?
That's wrong because he is a trans man and should have been allowed to wrestle with the men. So now
I agree with that point. Yeah.
Okay. So there are trans women who now we'll probably disagree on this. I believe that, well, here's the thing. If this is to me, I don't understand that this to me should be the conservative viewpoint on this. If somebody's child is feeling as if they are a trans person, either a trans man, young trans man, or a young trans woman, they go to their parents, and the parents bring their children to their doctor, to their general practitioner, and they go see a psychologist, and they check off all the boxes like responsible parents would do, and they go talk, and everybody involved makes goes through it and says, okay, this person is not just a matter of confusion. This person really is a trans woman. This person who was assigned male at birth is really a young trans woman, and really, it's at the point when this young person turns 18, will probably want to start the process of transitioning. We really want to consider putting this person on puberty blockers. To me, if the parents believe that it's right, and the child believes that it's right, and the doctors all sign off on it, if everybody signs off on it, why should the government step in and say no? Shouldn't it?
Why not wait until you're 18 like everything else? You have to be 18 to do other things. You got to be 18 to go in the military. Why not be 18 to do that too?
Because you can't. Because at 18 you can't use puberty blockers. I'm not talking about removing parts. I'm not talking about gender reassignment. I'm talking about puberty blockers. You can stop puberty blockers at any point, and puberty can restart once you stop.
Okay. If that's a fact, I didn't know too much about that. So you educated me there on that one.
So at that point, you're not getting as much of the hormones that you would as you're developing, and therefore, if you were participating in a woman's sport as a trans woman, then you might not have those testosterone advantages that you might have. But what's also another thing is that, let's say you're I forget the name of the syndrome off the top of my head, because there's so many different other conditions that somebody can have. Polycystic ovary syndrome, I think. Somebody can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong about this one, where these women, where they're cis women, so assigned female at birth, and they are women, and they're not trans, but they produce higher levels of testosterone, so they may grow more muscles more quickly. They may have higher bone density. They may have features that, I think one of the women who has participated in the Olympics, people were thinking they're saying this woman's a dude, and it's not. It's a woman. She just has higher levels naturally of testosterone. Are we going to be checking everybody for higher testosterone levels to make sure that they don't compete either? Are we going to be doing everything? What levels of fairness are we going to be judging, these young girls on when they compete? I mean, is it fair if let's say there's a competition going on in the public schools, and let's say there's wealthy parents in the public schools, and they can afford personal trainers for their kids, and meanwhile other kids in the same school are poorer parents, and they can't afford the personal trainers, so their kids aren't as toned.
I know.
And so, and let's say there's other kids who, all these kids are maybe trying to fight for athletic scholarships, but here you have, a kid maybe who might have a thyroid condition that's keeping them overweight, so they can't compete in this thing. It's not fair to that person. They can't compete for the scholarships because of that.
What eliminates all that stuff? Now you're really getting technical, and I understand. I agree with you. That what eliminates that? All National Socialism. That's what eliminates that.
National Socialism?
Because of the best,
Well, that's not.
Yeah, National Socialism. Go ahead.
Well, National Socialism is Nazism. But but making,
but we don't want that. But I'm talking about that form of style of governmental belief and pattern as far as the workforce and social standards. Not where we're going to take this group of people and go kill them. No, I'm talking about only the best will get and achieve and thrive. Meanwhile, with the help and assistance of the government at the same time. You're going to have to take your best of your best, and the lower are still going to achieve, but we're not going to do what the Nazis did, but use the National Socialist point of plan and view the same way, but not in a discriminatory way. It can work.
What I'm saying is that
in Europe.
What I'm saying, what I was getting to is like maybe we just don't make it so that don't make it so that you need a sports scholarship to go to school. Like
that too.
So make it so that you can go to college and get an education regardless of your ability to compete. Now these people could still go and compete and go to college, and now that colleges allow people to use their talents and make money off of it, like they should.
Everyone should have the opportunity. Everyone should have the opportunity to go to college. That's where I'll agree. I don't believe in the capitalist type of way of belief there, where you have to. I believe everyone should get an opportunity. Same thing with healthcare. Everyone should be entitled to healthcare.
Well, good. Look, I'm glad you say that. That's good. I'm glad you believe that everybody's entitled to healthcare. That's great. But ultimately, usually my end of this sports, especially high school sports rant, usually ends up with is the fact that there are studies that show that for every individual who just treats a young trans person as if they want to be treated, like for every person who uses a young trans person's correct pronouns, calls them by the name that they wish to be called, doesn't misgender them, etc., and just treats them with dignity and respect. For every person that does that, they're 50% less likely to commit suicide. And of course, so like the first person, 50%, and then 50% off of that. So like 70, that means 75%, and then 50% off of that. So it's not like two people means they're guaranteed to not commit suicide. But so, I mean, I guess you get diminishing returns at some point. But for every person that accepts them, they're less and less and less likely to unalive themselves. So my concern with the whole issue is not whether or not little Sally is going to get a sports scholarship. It's whether or not somebody is going to unalive themselves or not. So that's my ultimate concern here, is making sure that making sure that we treat people with dignity and respect. And my thing is that a lot of these things, like the fear mongering that goes on, like with the last slide that I showed, with the transgender toddlers being treated at 2 years old, which is a bunch of bunk. It's a bunch of BS. It's not happening. This is because this center treats more than just young trans youth. It treats many different other conditions, that all they're doing is just fear-mongering about this boogeyman that is the trans people, and they're not discussing the issue in a
we look too
way.
much for the doctors. Too much. A doctor that's going to look at a child play with a toy and then come to a conclusion, I think, is just ridiculous anyway. I mean, it just really is. There's too much in our life. There's too much too much control of everything. And that's where I come in, where I say less government. But we're a wealthy country, and we have a central bank. We've talked about this too before, not to change the subject. But we can have the ability to do all these things without having to suppress certain groups or have the control that we have, because people want to control us, and the government wants to. And that's really the corruption and really what happens when government becomes too large. It becomes corrupt and wants to control too many aspects of our life and influence us in the medical field, the educational field, and it's just too much.
So TV2 Live in the chat asks, Gibson, do you think, since you say that everybody has the right to health care, do you believe that we should have a single payer plan? Like, how would you implement that everybody should have health care?
Well, I don't know it off the top of my head to give you my plan.
Okay.
How we should implement it. All I can say is a broad spectrum right now is we have the ability to provide health care for everybody in this country. And there's no reason why we should not have the opportunity for everyone to have access to the same health care everyone else does. And we can have that in this country. There's no reason why.
That's fair enough. And look, like when I ran for Congress way back in the day in 2004, like my idea was like a baseline preventive care, like guaranteeing everybody, like you can go to the doctor, you can get your preventive care. Everything preventive is covered 100% up front. And to make sure that that you get everything treated that you need to get treated up front, to make it less likely for everybody to use the emergency rooms. And that was my start. And
that's a great idea, because it would save money in the end too with the emergency room usage.
Because nobody can get turned, because you have a problem of people abusing the emergency rooms, because if you don't have insurance, you then have to wait. That people will wait to make their problems so they get large enough to use the emergency room, and then they're worse, and then they're more expensive. So
exactly.
So if we did that, and then that's one thing. Now, the problem is, like, when Bernie Sanders talks about his plan, you couldn't even have like a Chris Matthews on MSNBC discussing the plan honestly, or with Elizabeth Warren's plan, I think it was, because it was like, are you going to raise taxes on it? And she was like, well, yeah. I was like, okay. And then he changed the subject. I'm like, well, yeah, you're raising taxes, but then you're not paying your premiums, so it's how much net money are you saving?
You're saving, yeah. You're spending and saving, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, so you have to look at the entirety, the difference of it. Like, I don't know. Like, I paid more. I actually paid, like, I did better on the private market getting a healthcare plan through the podcast than I did on the on the front side than going through the exchange. Now,
what about copays? Let me ask you that real quick. What about copays?
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
On the front end, I did better going through like my podcast and I had to get like myself a plan and then my wife and my kids a plan. So we were like two separate plans. Premium wise, it was cheaper. Now, if everybody would have gotten sick at the same time, it would have been worse. But
wow. Okay.
But so if everybody, fortunately that didn't happen, and that was only the case for 11 months. But had everybody gotten sick, it would have been better for us to go on the exchange plans. So again, the copays that we had in exchange plans would have been blah for us. Now I know people who do have an exchange plan who have wonderful copays. I don't know, they found a better plan than I did apparently. So or maybe they had a better plan this year than when I was looking, but I've had a different plan.
But don't you think that all the doctors, the leading doctors and surgeons across this country, everybody can't sit down at the table and come up with just a one single plan that not based upon income, based upon anything, that if you're an American citizen, this is what you can get when you walk into a doctor's office in this country, and everybody gets it, and why can't we all come to that agreement? It's not that hard, to figure out. I just don't see why that can't be done in this country.
I agree with you. I think we should be able to get that done. Unfortunately, somebody's going to label it something, and somebody else is going to label it something else, and then you're not going to be able to sit down. Unfortunately, we have too many people who are unwilling to work with other people. And we need to have more people who are willing to work with with more people on the other side. So
I agree. I have to go, but I appreciate you taking my call. It was a good conversation. I appreciate it. I'll listen in. I just got some work to do on the side here. So,
right. Well, I'm glad.
I appreciate it.
As always, we disagreed on some. I'm glad we agreed on some, and have a good one.
You too.
All right. Bye. All right. So let's get back to the topic at hand. Let's see, Elizabeth. I listened to the committee hearings when they were negotiating Obamacare. I read the whole Obamacare thing. Like I was going through the whole 6 months, and none of the conservatives believed me when I was like, they were like, read the bill. I'm like, I read the bill. I debated my congressman who brought the whole bill in. I'm like, I read it. And he was trying to claim that one thing was like death panels. I'm like, that's not death panels. You're listening to the Liberty Council. They told you that. You didn't read this. This is about cost sharing. And the one problem with the Affordable Care Act, and I'll say it, it's not perfect. There are many problems with the Affordable Care Act. It could be finagled in such a way where if you basically say, okay, well, if the doctors charge higher prices, if you basically say, I'm going to reimburse you higher rates, for these procedures than I used to. Like, let's say you would reimburse something for $100, right? All right, let's say you would reimburse something for 80. So you could basically charge 100 for your premium or whatever and pay 80 to the doctor and then keep 20. Right? And then you would keep 20 off the top, and that's the most you could keep off of that, right? So you would say, okay, well, instead of I'm going to agree to pay you 100 instead of 80 for these services, right? So now, because I'm agreeing to pay you 100, I can now charge my customers more than 120, because now 80 to get 80% of X to get to 100 is more than $20 more than 100. So I get to keep more money, which means the premiums go up. So that was one of the problems with the Affordable Care Act. There are other problems with it as well, but it was better than what we had, because the Affordable Care Act got rid of things like rescission. It got rid of pre-existing condition clauses, and one of the things that a lot of people didn't get was you had to have a mandate to get rid of pre-existing condition clauses, or otherwise you had dealt with anti-selection. And if you don't understand what that means, you were not equipped to debate the topic of whether or not we should have a mandate or not. Because anti-selection basically meant that, or adverse selection, which is another way to put it, that if you didn't have to buy insurance until you were sick, then you would wait until you were sick to buy insurance. So if you can't, so what basically, then that, so if you had a pre-existing condition clause that went away, you had to have a mandate in place to prevent you from waiting to get sick to buy, because then you just have a health discount plan, and then the insurance companies go out of business. You don't have any insurance companies, you can't buy insurance. So, anywho, yeah, too many Rick Scotts in Congress. Yes. 2 more hospitals just closed here in Appalachia. Vulture capitalists drain them dry and then close them down. Ugh. Yeah. And yeah, there was that whole issue with states being able to opt out, which also sucked. All right. Let's get off of this one. Let's go to the next one. So remember I was saying, they're trying to vilify people into, I forgot to pull this thing up. Hold on. So basically he signed into law that includes death penalty for child rapists. Now, at your gut, at everybody's gut, you're like, all right, nobody is going to weep that somebody who raped a child dies. I'm not going to weep about it. I don't know anybody in the chat who's going to weep about it. Like, I can't imagine anybody who's going to be sitting here and say that dead child molesters are a bad thing. Like, Mickey Mouse is going to kick Ron's ass. Yes, that is going to happen. Hold on. Trying to find this thing. Anyway, so, but yeah, but it's a I'm going to make people happy bill. I'm going to be able to say, yes, I'm going to put these child rapists to death, and it's a good thing, and la la la, and I'm pandering to the people because they're going to love me for doing this. But again, we're going to turn these people who are LGBTQA folks, we're going to make that they're the groomers, they're the pedophiles, so there's the people we need to be scared about. Then we're gonna get to kill them, because if they're groomers and pedophiles, then we're gonna get to kill them, because guess what? if they're raping the kids, then we get to kill them, and then they're gonna perk those little ears up because ooh yay. So there's that. But one thing that I'm concerned about this whole thing, and it's an unpopular statement to make, apparently, because I had some people give me pushback on it, which was, is this really helping kids? Does this really help children? I don't know. Does it? If somebody is a child rapist, right now, they know that they're not going to get the death penalty if they're caught. So, if they know that they're going to get the death penalty, is that going to be a deterrent for them to not rape the children? Or is that going to be incentive for them to murder their victims? That's my question. That's one of my questions, at least. Because if it's the latter, you're not protecting the children. You're making it more likely for those children to die. Now, obviously, those children are going to have some problems. Clearly, there might be some issues in those child's later in life, for those children later in life. I discussed this issue in my living life as a fat person, because when I worked at Louisiana Public Health Institute, I said that children who are abused as children, there is a high correlation between children who are victims of abuse, be it physical or sexual abuse, are more likely to be morbidly obese as adults. There's a high correlation between childhood abuse, especially sexual abuse, and obesity, especially with young girls who their minds will say, look, if I eat, I'll be less, even though child abuse is usually not about necessarily, attractiveness. It's about, the sickness in the mind of the pedo. In the mind of the young child, they're going to think, oh, if I make myself fat, I'll be less attractive, so therefore I'm going to gorge myself and make myself less attractive, so therefore I'll be less likely to be abused. But even without that thought, which is one of the things that the study that I read said, just to deal with the issues that arise from being molested, as a young kid, you don't have access to alcohol. You don't have access to drugs, typically. Now, some kids do, and some kids might go get the liquor, go raid the liquor cabinet, or some kids might go find mommy or daddy's pills or something. But in most cases, the kids are going to go raid the pantry and go eat the cookies, or go eat snacks, or go chug the sodas, or whatever. Then Real Big P says, no, it won't. Death penalty for murder with guns doesn't work to deter them. The death penalty doesn't work as a preventive law. And that's my point. Like, I don't think it's going to prevent them from committing the crimes. And if they feel like they're going to be more likely to get away with their crimes, I think they'll be more likely to unalive the children to make them more likely to get away with their crimes. Right? So to me, it puts the children more at risk, not less at risk. So that's one of the problems I have with this DeSantis bill. I'm trying to find the Supreme Court ruling where this was the case. boo. Not Furman versus Georgia eliminated the death penalty in every state because it was done in a capricious way or whatever. But there's some ruling, I can't seem to find it, that basically said that you can't have the death penalty in non-murder cases. I can't seem to find it, but that's still Furman versus Georgia, which is not it. But I heard somewhere, several places, that they said that the death penalty was in the Supreme Court was deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in cases that are not dealing with murder. So this law, that would make this law automatically unconstitutional. But we have a Supreme Court that's an activist conservative Supreme Court. And what are these conservative people doing now? What are these conservative legislators doing now? They are passing laws meant to challenge existing Supreme Court rulings, meant to challenge and overthrow these existing Supreme Court rulings, because we have a Supreme Court that cares not for stare decisis. We have a Supreme Court that wants to overturn lots of Supreme Court rulings from the past. So maybe he wants to just challenge this stare decisis as well and say, okay, well, let's make the death penalty legal for other things other than murder as well. So who knows? Who knows with that part? But one of the horrible things that came up in this discussion, let me see if I can scroll and find it. Because here, I can't find that question because that statement, because the statement was from a suspended account. Interesting. I should have taken a screenshot. So I did ask the question to Ron DeSantis. Serious question, because child rape is clearly abhorrent. Will the death penalty for child rapists make it more likely that child rapists will murder their victims since it's the same penalty? Look, I won't weep for them if they fry, but does this protect kids best? So this person who says, from this suspended account, said something basically to the effect of, the kids turn into them too, or whatever. And I said, the child were turned into what? And basically this user said that he didn't care if the molester murdered the victim, because it didn't matter, because the victim is just going to turn into a child molester themselves, and as such he's just stopping it at the source. And I was like, what? Are you freaking kidding me? Are you absolutely freaking kidding me? I need to scroll back up and deal with this Real Bill P comment as well, because holy crap. Yeah, because that's something else to deal with conservative accusations are really confessions. So I said, according to this source, that theory is false. According to theconversation.com, child sex abuse does not create pedophiles. A popular misconception is that most child sex offenders were once victims themselves. So let's click on that link, and we'll go down it. Popular misconception is that most child sex offenders were once victims themselves. The theory is based on the erroneous assumption that they've become pedophiles, those preferentially sexually attracted to prepubescent children because of their victimization. This is a tidy explanation for a minority of offenders, a minority. But for most victims of child sex abuse, this is not only untrue, it's harmful. It can increase the stigma and prevent people from speaking up about their abuse. Some victims may fear they will one day become an offender, or at least develop the desire to offend. The estimated prevalence of sexual abuse against children varies depending on the study. Prevalence estimates of abuse against males range from 1.4 to 8% of the population for penetrative abuse and 5.7 to 16% for non-penetrative abuse. For females, prevalence rates are estimated at 4 to 12% of the population for penetrative abuse, 13.9 to 36 for non-penetrative. I'm thinking that I think the population that they're talking about is the population of sex offenders. I don't think they're talking about the population as a whole. Many empirical studies have investigated a link between the sexual victimization as a child and later sex offending or other delinquent behaviors. As I wrote in my last conversation article, some studies suggest anywhere between 33% and 75% of child sex offenders report being sexually abused as children. Others debunk the theory. A 2001 study, for example, combined self-reports of child abuse with polygraph tests. Before the polygraph test, 61% of sex offenders claimed to have been abused compared to 30% after the polygraph. This indicates that more sex offenders claim to have been abused as children than actually have a history of abuse. A more recent study of more than 38,000 males found that very few who were sexually abused went on to become offenders themselves. Only 4% of sexual offenders studied had confirmed history of child sexual abuse themselves. Researchers said the findings may provide reassurance that sexually abusing others is a rare outcome of being victimized. So the answer to the question, does child sexual abuse create pedophiles? The answer is largely no. A small percentage of victims will go on to become offenders, but the vast majority won't. And what I went on to say in my tweet over here, it's probably even a smaller percentage than what was stated in this article, because the amount of people who are admitting that they were abused as children is probably less than the actual amount, because of the stigma that's attached to admitting that you're a victim of childhood abuse, because people are afraid that people are going to think, oh, well, you're a victim of childhood abuse, you're more likely to be a sexual predator now because of the stigma, because of the falsehood belief. So it's a self-perpetuating thing. Less people admit to being abused, so therefore society sees a higher percentage of people abused versus people who go on to abuse. So if everybody were to come out and say, hey, we were abused, you would see much, 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 much less. So it might even be less than 4%, it might be 3%, it might be 2% of the people who were abused. Which is why during my episode of Living Life as a Fat Man, when I discussed that whole thing about childhood abuse and the propensity of people being abused as a child and having a large correlation between abuse and being morbidly obese, and why a few weeks ago I almost said it. That's why I didn't say it, but now I will. I'm one of those people. My grandfather did inappropriately touch me as a kid. And one of the reasons I never said it before was because I was afraid that people would think that of me. I was afraid that people would be like, oh, well, if he was touched inappropriately as a child, that's going to make him more likely to be somebody who's an offender in the future. And only after reading this thing did I have the courage to say it publicly here. Only after reading this. Now, I did say it on my Facebook page before, so some of you who are friends with me on Facebook know it already. But I was half tempted to say it a few weeks back, but I changed my mind midstream. I was like, no, I'm not going to say it. And I almost said it, but I didn't. I chickened out. I didn't feel like saying it out into the open, out into the internet where anybody could hear it. But when I was having this discussion and that guy made his rude ass comment, and then I went ahead and found this article and saw the data and saw, oh, that's a falsehood. That's not a true statement. That is a myth. That is not a real thing. Huh. Okay. Which made me more likely and more willing to be able to come forward and say it. So there you go. A truth about Liberal Dan. So now you know something extra about me and my life. So there you go. Let's flip back to the main one. Go back into the chat. And part of the reason I share is simply because of the fact that, you know, perhaps it helps others. I mean, I know when I shared it on Facebook, a lot of people were thanking me for it. It's something I've dealt with in therapy a little bit. Another one of the reasons that I didn't talk about it a lot, or I didn't come out with it publicly. I was worried about how it would like affect my mom. But I'm not sharing things publicly with my mom on Facebook at the moment. I'm having some issues there too. So she couldn't see it. So I was afraid that she would feel terribly guilty that it happened to me, even though I don't know why she would, because it wasn't her fault. How could she have possibly known? You know.
It is what it is.
Thank you, Donald. So it's another reason why I get really upset when I start hearing these people ranting and raving about people being groomers and people being pedophiles and people doing this and that and making all these accusations against others when they have no basis to do it. Because throwing around that accusation against people when there's no evidence of it, just to use it as a political attack, it's not just mean-spirited, it's horrible. It's terrible, and it's most likely they're the ones doing it anyway. Anyway, let's scroll back. I saw something that I think Bill was talking about, and I want to scroll back and see about some of the stuff. Boo, 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 boo. P-dubs, it also tends to damage the child's self-esteem and may overeat for comfort. That's also true. That is also a very good point. Thank you for that. MJ, I have such atrocious thoughts about Death Satan. They'd land me in jail. Yeah, me too. P-dubs, they need to stop letting sexual predators out of prison. They have low success of reforming. They get out and reoffend. Yeah, recidivism of people who are offenders are high. I don't know how well chemical castration works with them. The thing I don't get with sex offenders and like, because you're a sex offender, so if you move into a neighborhood as a sex offender, you have to like send out postcards like, hey, I'm a sex offender, I'm moving to your neighborhood, here's the crimes that I did. And so, okay, so if you're a kid toucher, you molested children, yeah, okay, I get that, I understand that. Yeah, kids, don't go near that house. I don't want you anywhere near that house. Don't go trick-or-treating there. They can't even do trick-or-treating because they can't. It's against the law. But then, like, somebody else is like, hey, this is my house. I live here. I was a sexual offender. What was your sex crimes? Oh, I was a hooker. People be knocking on the door. Hey, I heard you were a hooker. Sounds like a business card almost. Like, why would you like, hey, this is my address and I'm a hooker. Hello? You open for business? It seems kind of silly to kind of tell all your neighbors that you're a hooker and allow it to, like, hey, I'm advertising. Include a coupon. Buy one, get one free special. Or punch card. Buy 9, get the 10th for free. Anyway. Real Bill P. Now states are lowering the age of consent. When child marriage becomes legal, all children are down. I mean, child marriage is legal in many of these states that are conservative states. As low as 13. It's absurd. Protect the kids, but let me marry one. Ooh. It's gross. I mean, who looks at a 13-year-old and is like, I want to marry that one? Amazes me that no one pointing out that Trump is a sexual predator. I mean, he is. I mean, not just the whole grab him by the hoo-ha thing, not just the fact that he raped somebody allegedly I mean, I believe the woman in the department store. He walked into the freaking Miss Teen USA locker room when the girls were changing. Like, gross. Come on. Like, ugh. Ugh. See, let's see. Was it Hillary snuck in and killed Epstein? Nice. Let's see. Wait, I missed part of the Elizabeth story. Hold on. I don't know. I missed part of the Elizabeth story. I don't know. Something about broken foot. I don't know. I have to catch up with that later. Real Bill P. It took me 57 years to find and prosecute my abuser. Wow. Mine's long dead. Died, I want to say, sophomore year of high school. I think it was sophomore year of high school, because we were living in my apartment, which meant they had just moved to California. My grandparents had just moved to California, which means we had just moved to our apartments, and like apparently they just got moved out there. They got everything moved into the house, and then he croaked. Let's see. John Schultz, I think we have a chance Gen Z is starting to pay attention. Maybe. I don't know. Gen Z needs to support. They'll be targeted by the right wingers. The thing is, with like, now you have conservatives out there who want to make the voting age 21 or 25 even. It's like, nobody who's 18 to 20 should be voting Republican at all, because they're fine with them going to war, but they don't want them to vote. They're happy with them dying, but they don't want them voting. It's ridiculous. That should be my next Fat Man rant. Maybe I'll make it tonight. Who knows? Let's see. It's usually a family member or close family friend. Awkward for the child to tell them. Good grief. Yeah. Well, the thing with my situation was, this is the thing with my situation. It stopped at one point. I got fed up, and I forget how old I was. I might have been like 8 or 9, maybe. I think it was before middle school, maybe. And I basically was like, if you don't stop, I'm telling mom. And I yelled it. And it was in their apartment after they'd moved down to Baltimore, when I was living in Baltimore. And it stopped at that point. It was done. Finished. And for the longest time, I thought, okay, well, I stopped it before anything, because it was as the article worded it, it wasn't penetrative, it was just touching. Just. And I still say just. And I thought, I put an end to it. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, and I've heard horror stories of other people, what happened to them. So I was thought, well, obviously it wasn't as bad for me as other people, so therefore it must have had not as big of an effect of me as what I thought it might have. So therefore, very little harm, not worry about it. And then when I'm working at Louisiana Public Health Institute and I hear the person talking about the high correlation between obesity and childhood abuse, I'm like, maybe it affected me much more than I thought. And that's when I put 2 and 2 together and realized, well, it did affect me much more than I thought. So I just scrolled way too far. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Thank you all. Thank you all for the hearts. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all for the hearts. Thank you, Diane. I will always keep fighting for what's right. You know, one of the things, like, I almost gave up on the podcast. Like, I almost gave up on this about maybe 5 years ago ish, maybe. Like, I was having very few listeners, and I was very frustrated. I wasn't getting a lot of support from my friends. Like, felt like I was just talking in the ether and nobody was listening. And, like, I almost gave up. And I was like, why should I continue doing this? I mean, it's something I want to do. It's something I'd like to do, but I feel like I'm spinning my wheels doing nothing. And one of my friends messaged me privately, and she was like, you can't give up on this. You're doing something that's very important, and one day it's going to work out. So you have to keep fighting. And I always go back and read that message whenever I feel like I'm down in the dumps, whenever I felt like this was just never going to work out and I felt like giving up, I go back and I read that message, and it lights up my day. It would light up my day. That is until this past year and a half-ish, ever since all of y'all started coming into the podcast, and ever since I got Hal to come to the podcast, and once that started and things started falling into place, now I feel much better with it. I feel like, y'all have made this feel like I'm being, much more successful with it. I feel much better with it. I feel like I'm doing things now. I feel like I'm being successful. Like I'm reaching people. I'm making a difference. That I'm getting, I feel like I'm making a difference at this point. And while yes, I can grow, and yes, I see future steps that need to be made for me for this to be even better and better and better. I see places. I still have goals to reach. Obviously, I want to make 1,000 subscribers. I want to become monetized. I want to get more subscriptions. I want to get more patrons. Yada yada yada. I'd love to be able to do this full time, but baby steps. But I love every one of y'all for coming in here and joining me and supporting me, and y'all are awesome. So, ever since 2 months ago, 3 months ago, this has been wonderful. So, and the support y'all give me just makes me feel very, very good. So, let's see. P-dubs, there were plenty of grown men who came onto me when I was 13. Yeah, I mean, it's scary how I've seen people oogle, like, as I drop my son off at middle school, and I'll see people ogling some of the girls as they get dropped off, and I'm just like, come on, like, avert your eyes. If what is it, I'm Jewish, so I don't believe in Jesus, but there's that good line that Jesus had where where the guy's like, I can't help but stare or whatever, and the Jesus line is, well, then poke your eyes out, or something to that effect. Again, I'm Jewish, but I fully endorse that statement. If you can't help but look, just gouge your own eyes out. Sounds like a good thing. Sounds like a good advice. My feeling that is, if a man thinks he can get away with it, he'll do it. Not every man, but many men. Yes, that's there are many men that are problematic. I have a Facebook tag group that I created. It's all one word. A bunch of men, though. Because there's so many times when guys will be like, well, not all men. I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, not all men, but a bunch of men, though. Because a bunch of men can be terrible. A bunch of men can be awful. There are reasons why. Like, there's there's another group that I'm in, like, this is the reason why women make tag groups about us, and they'll just show like screenshots of posts of terrible things that men say and do. Jeff Curry lost Virginia. I just scrolled. Lost Virginia in a cave in 15. Yes, I'm proud. From Montana in a cave. Wow. Did I tell my story? I don't know if I told my story about how I lost my virginity. It goes from aw to huh to ugh. But if I ever do tell that story, it's going to be on Liberal Dan Radio After Dark, or whatever I decide to call the other show. So if y'all want to get the Liberal Dan Radio After Dark thing going, get me to 1,000 subscribers, because we'll have that discussion on that show, not on here, on that show. Because that's going to be an adults-only channel. That's going to be an age-restricted channel, because I think age restrictions hurt monetization, so I want to make sure to have that be completely different than this. Let's see. Society makes the victim the aggressor. Unfortunately, it does. Often with the victim blaming. I was in some group where somebody was talking about, like, she was in a relationship with somebody. That person was given some medications, and they were told to not drink on them, but they drank on them anyway and got a little overly intoxicated, and that person was trying to initiate sexual intercourse with their partner who was sober, and the sober partner was like, no, you're drunk, no. And the person who was drunk was just continuously like trying, and eventually the person caved and did it. Person got sober, got mad, and left, and said that she had raped them. And all their friends were like, you, and everyone in the group's like, no, the person that was drunk assaulted you. Just because you're drunk, it doesn't mean you can't commit a crime. Like, and we're like, no, like everyone's, and then somebody came into that group and was like, well, you should have done X. And that post, I was going to respond to that post, but apparently the response got deleted, and I was like, good, because they deleted the victim blaming crap. But victim blaming is no. I do not stand for victim blaming. Like, I will mute anybody in that thing who victim, like, if anybody, I let people get away with a lot of horrible crap who call in. I will mute somebody who victim blames and correct them immediately. A cave on a Honda. Huh. P-dubs, my stepfather's father raped my oldest sister and molested. Oh, I'm so sorry about that, P-dubs. Apparently, because see, there's my mom. I don't know if my grandfather, it's my grandfather on my mom's side, and that's my she was adopted by him and my grandmother. My mom has her biological paternal side, she found them through 23andMe. Before I blocked them, I was having a conversation with one of my cousins, and apparently there was a whole bunch of other molestation that was going on the biological side too. So I'm glad I wasn't in that part of the kin either. The maternal side didn't want anything to do with her, either with both with giving her up for adoption and later on in life when she managed to find one or two of them. But yeah, I ended up, I got into an argument with the cousin and was just like, no, you know what? I don't even want to deal with y'all. Y'all can just go away. I don't need y'all. I'm done. So apparently there was some horrible things going on molestation wise with my biological kin, as I've been calling them. I scrolled again too far. Let's see. I had no idea I was lonely and miserable till I watched 2 minutes of the Scientology channel. Yeah, pluck your eye out. Yes, P-Dubs, you have it right. Pluck your eye out. Yes. Hey, Bicycle Mike. I'm still scrolling, trying to catch up with the chat. I like the guy on Instagram perplexed because he thought light and regular tampons labeled L&R because he labeled L&R, asked why she had left and right tampons. I remember that one. I was like, somebody posted that one in one of my groups, and I was like, duh, it's like the Twix, like the left and right Twix, right? And everyone laughed. Let's see. I am all caught up with the scrolling. LOL. I like making fun of the dumbness that happens. Like, I've been in groups like, did you fail sex ed or did sex ed fail you? And if thine side offends, then pluck it out. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, because I think somebody was like looking at a prostitute or something and whatever, and somebody didn't like looking at the hooker or whatever in the Bible, and Jesus was like, all right, well then pluck your eye out. Maybe Jesus was telling them to go pluck yourself. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. What do I know? I'm Jewish. I'm a Jew, a lonely Jew on Christmas. It's hard to be a Jew on Christmas. Let's see. The fascist plan, make them dumb as to not cause trouble. Well, I mean, that's why Donald Trump said he loves the poorly educated. He loves the poorly educated. And someone was like, he said he likes the well-educated too. I'm like, no, he didn't. He didn't say that at all. The only people he said he loved was the poorly educated. He loves the poorly educated. Those are the best ones for him. He loves the people who cannot fight back, that cannot understand when he's lying, when he's, when he's scamming them, when he's being a snake oil salesman, etc. He just loves them people. Elizabeth, you love me some Jewish people. Well, I love you too, Elizabeth. Of course, as I've said before, I'm Jewish. Well, I'm not practicing, but I don't need to practice. I've practiced enough as a kid. I don't need to practice anymore. But my wife being Catholic makes my kids cashews. Although I have by someone like I was Jewish, now I'm culturally Jewish. I mean, that's basically it. I mean, I basically say, while yes, she is beautiful. I married up. While I'm not a practicing Jew, the Nazis don't care. The white supremacists don't care whether or not I'm practicing or not. All they care about is the fact that my mom's Jewish. I was born Jewish. Therefore, they want me dead just the same. So it doesn't matter to me whether or not, I light a menorah regularly every Hanukkah, or I practice, or I keep the Sabbath holy, or I keep, whether or not I eat bacon or eat milk and meat, or otherwise keep kosher, or do the other Jewish things wear a yarmulke, which, kind of bothers me. There's a picture of, speaking of Ron DeSantis, bothers me. There's that picture of Ron DeSantis on whatchamacallit. There's a picture of Ron DeSantis at the Western Wall on wearing a yarmulke or kippah. And I'm not comfortable with that. I don't like that idea. I don't like the idea that he's wearing a yarmulke. I think it's absolutely cultural appropriation. Now, some people may agree, some people may disagree. Now, am I going to say that every goy, every non-Jewish person wearing a yarmulke is culturally appropriating? Not necessarily. If you treat the Jewish people with respect and whatever, and maybe I'll be fine with it. But if you pander to Nazis and white supremacists, no, you don't get to wear the yarmulke. I'm sorry. Take that crap off. You do not get to wear a yarmulke if you pander to white supremacists, Nazis, etc. If you're fighting woke culture, you don't get to wear the yarmulke. Sad thing is that his lawyer, his executive counsel, I guess is the correct way to put it, because it was his official governmental executive counsel, when asked in court to define what woke was, he got it right. He actually, in a very brief sentence, basically said the idea that there are systems of oppression in this country that need to be addressed, or something to that effect. It was a very short and succinct definition of woke. That's basically correct. And that's where woke Florida, so Florida is where that goes to die. So if in Florida, that's where is where that the idea that those systems of oppression don't need to be addressed. There you go. That's where Ron DeSantis basically is just admitting to you that he doesn't feel that systems of oppression don't need to be addressed. Well, obviously. I say, screw you, Ron DeSantis. Gorsh. That's one thing that I found quite amusing, though. Going back to my cruise for a second. I don't know if I talked about this or not. If I did, oh well, you get to hear it again. Disney cruise lines are the only cruise lines where you actually get to see fireworks off the ship. So they'll launch fireworks off the ship. It's okay. It's not a great fireworks show, but it's fireworks off the side of the ship. And like, you know, on the Mickey Mouse Club's house, they'll say like hot dog, hot diggity dog, or whatever, or they'll say hot dog or whatever. And so they were playing Uptown Funk. So part of Uptown Funk would be like, too hot, hot damn. Call the police and the fireman, too hot, hot damn. So they start singing it. I'm like, I start thinking to myself, well, what are they going to sing there? Really quickly, because I didn't know what they were going to sing there. Because, well, they're not going to say hot damn on a Disney cruise, just because all these kids there, and it doesn't seem like something that they would sing in front of kids. It's not terrible, but so they're like, too hot, hot dog. And so I just started imagining, like, you know, well, why aren't they having like Mickey singing it? Like, you know, too hot, hot dog. And so then my mind, because if you've listened to me long enough, you know that when my mind starts thinking about parodies, I just start running. My mind just starts going. And so it just became, becoming like a song between Mickey Mouse and Goofy. And instead of Uptown Funk, it was Uptown Yuck. So like, Uptown Yuck gonna give it to you. Uptown Yuck gonna give it to you. Don't believe me, just gorsh. So I was having a very good time with it. And my kids were just staring at me like, what the hell are you doing? Like, they were not amused whatsoever. Don't believe me, just gorsh. Don't believe me, just gorsh. Too hot, hot dog. Call the police and the fireman. Only thing I can't do I can't do Donald. I can't do Donald Duck. Like, I can do that, like I can do that, but I can't speak like Donald. Just it's not an imitation that I have figured out how to do. Stitch is probably my best one. That Ohana means family. Family means no one gets left behind or forgotten. So, so that's my Stitch. So there's that. I've managed to see. What was I gonna say earlier? I was gonna talk about something else too. I wanted to do I know Hal hates TikToks, but I wanted to make a TikTok about this one. It was what is your hot take? What is your unpopular hot take that's guaranteed to piss you off, but it's probably true and needs to be said anyway. Here's mine. And mine is basically, why is it called The Greatest Generation? I understand that Tom Brokaw, NBC Nightly News, called it The Greatest Generation in his book, right? So he labeled them The Greatest Generation. But why? Why is it The Greatest Generation? I mean, yeah, they went to war and they killed Nazis. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing that they went over there and they killed Nazis. Fine. And then they came back here and turned fire hoses on black people. And still had their separate water fountains and still had discrimination. And all the black people that came back that served over there had water hoses turned on them and dogs turned on them and had to sit in the back of the bus and had separate bathrooms and, couldn't vote and had to march for their rights for additional 20 years before they were finally given some semblance of rights before the 1965 Civil Rights Act were passed. So you'll forgive me if I don't want to call the people that were living in 1945 the greatest generation. Right? I mean, I'll listen to arguments to the contrary, but And furthermore, there were, Jews who were wanting to flee Nazi Germany, and America was like, no, we don't want them. They took the scientists. They were more than happy to take the scientists who were willing to help them build the bomb, but everyone else was just like, nah, we don't want them. We don't want those. No. You can have them. We don't want them. No Jews here. So yeah, no. Why would I believe that they're the greatest, supposedly, generation? Yeah, we turned most of them away. And I think the only reason Albert Einstein got to come here initially was not because we welcomed him with not because the country welcomed him with open arms. You know who welcomed Albert Einstein in with open arms? HBCUs. He went to go work at an HBCU. They gave him a job. That's why he got to come here, because he got a job at an HBCU. So maybe the people who worked at the HBCUs, maybe those people were part of the greatest generation. Maybe Black Americans who lived, maybe the Black Americans who went and fought over and killed Nazis for a country that didn't treat them as equals and risked their lives for this country that didn't treat them as equals. Maybe they should be labeled the greatest generation, but not the people that went over there and came back and then went and served in law enforcement and turned fire hoses and dogs against them. No, not them. Those people were shitty. F them. Wow, you could trace people back here to 1620, Elizabeth? Damn. That's crazy. I mean, I don't know where, my biological maternal side, I don't know. I know they settled in Georgia sometime. I don't know when. At some point they settled in Georgia, but I can't place that. My adoptive grandparents, I think they came early 1900s-ish. maybe a little bit later, maybe 1920s, maybe 1930s. I think it was before World War II. And I also think my great-grandparents on both sides, on my dad's side, are the ones that came here from the Caucasus region. I guess that makes me Caucasian, literally. They came here from there, from Russia-ish, Caucasian-ish area. Because my adoptive grandfather was born in Russia. My adoptive grandmother on my mom's side was born in I think in New York. My paternal grandfather and paternal grandmother were both born in New York. It was my paternal grandmother and great-grandmother, great-grandfathers, both great-grandfathers, I think, were born in Russia and emigrated over here when they were young, I think. So, Jeff Gray, my family historian was found. We are direct from William Wallace. Huh. Nice. Well, you're calling BS. Okay. They came here because of Russian oppression, effing Russians. Caucasus Slava. Okay, I don't know. I mean, it still says that I'm Eastern European, so according to Ancestry. So who knows? I mean, it's like a big swath of area that covers like almost all of Eastern Europe. So I don't know. Maybe it's Ukraine. Maybe it's Ukrainian. I don't know. I have to go back and look at my I did a family tree when I was in 8th grade. And in doing research for my family tree, I got like the best grade in the class. We had 2 people in the class, by the way, my 8th grade class. But I got the best grade in the class. But the teacher was very impressed with the work. Like I was very thorough with it. And we actually found new relatives that we didn't know that we had. And surprisingly enough, like my grandparents lived in Wilmington, Delaware. And I was doing some of the research with them, and we ended up, because of the research that we did, my grandmother continued to work on it, and she found additional relatives that were from Mexico that were living in Wilmington, Delaware, and she had no idea. So we found new relatives that happened to be living like right across the city from her, and she had no clue. So that was neat that we found new relatives. So it's always nice to find out. It's always nice to find new family, I guess. And they were nice. I've met them a couple times. Never got to meet one of my relatives, who apparently is a dentist who lives in Mexico City. I did go to Mexico City for a few days for one of my former jobs, one of my former places that I used to work. But yeah, it was. I think I told that story too, where my grandmother, she graduated college at 19. She had a degree in Spanish, and she was working for the War Department during World War II as a translator. She was for the Department of Censorship, I guess. And she would read letters that were being sent to Mexico, making sure that nobody was sending state secrets from the United States to Mexico. And one of the letters came across her desk, and she handed it to her coworker and said, "I can't do this." And she was like, "Why not?" She's like, "Well, it's my letter, so I shouldn't be reading my own letter to my own family. You have to read it." And it was her letter to her cousins that were living in Mexico City at the time. So, see. My mom wrote a book about her mother's side of the family and how we came to America. That's neat. Mine went from Massachusetts to Maryland to Tennessee, then Arkansas to Texas, then Mexico, then up through California. Wow. I have one relative that did a lot of moving. My aunt, my dad's sister, she went from Delaware to Chicago to Seattle to California. I think she's an attorney and she works for the federal government, and she's like hopped from place to place to place. And her husband's like a businessman, and he's just, I guess, always just did new businesses from, wherever they moved. Like he just, I guess, just made a new business wherever he worked. And they are just absolutely mind-bogglingly rich. I mean, not like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos rich, but they have a ridiculous amount of money. I mean, he owns like 12 fancy pants cars, and they live like up in the hills in California. We went to go stay with them. Their house is just huge. It's just so big and so nice. Like, oh my God, it's crazy. I'm happy for him. Like, my house needs to be clean. If my house was clean, it would be. It's fine for us. It's a big enough house for us. It just needs to be cleaned up in order to be nice and livable in it. But it's nice enough for now. But wow, their house is just amazing. We went to go visit one time in 2019, I think it was, when we went to Disney. We were going to do a road trip, and I was like, nah, it's too far to drive, especially in my van that's kind of old. What is a fancy pants car? Just old and like antique, but well kept and preserved, like collectors type cars, like old Porsches, old, like, I don't know, maybe an Alfa Romeo, like very expensive cars. Let me see if I can pull one up. Let me see if I can find pictures of. Let's see. Facebook. Let me find my cousin's profile. That. Come on. Load the page. I need a new laptop. That's what I need. Like, this laptop is like 3 years old, and it shouldn't be going as bad as it is, but ugh. Let's go to photos. Let's go to albums. Maybe mobile uploads? I don't know. Let's see. I do not need that popping up. Like, some are, let's see, let's open this back up over here. Some are like classic cars, like that. Thank you, Elizabeth. Good seeing you. Appreciate you coming by, as always. I don't know if these specifically are my cousin's, but I think these might be my cousin cars, not my uncle's cars. These might just be my cousin's cars. Let's see if I can find. Let's go back to photos. There should be some with him and my uncle, with them at like car shows or whatever. Or maybe they're with my aunt. My aunt might have those pictures. She might have taken the pictures of her husband. I don't think her husband has a Facebook page. My Uncle Steve is very I don't know if antisocial is the right word for it, but he doesn't do a lot like outwardly or whatever. I don't know. Let's see. Recent photos. Maybe that one? So, first of all, just to show you, this is a view from their house. That's the view from their house, which is just, amazing in and of itself. Just an amazing view. See what else. What else I can find. I know she has some pictures of the cars. Wait, door pants? What are door pants? Like pants that you wear when you open the door? Yeah, I usually just throw on shorts. When that happens, if I'm just wearing boxers around the house, I'll just throw on shorts. I'm pretty much just wearing boxers now. Is this one of them? Yeah, I think these are some of them. Yep, I think these are some of the cars. Is that a Ferrari? I think that's a Porsche. A Lamborghini. I can't tell you what this first one is. That might be another Porsche. I don't know what the last one is. Yep. A lot of nice cars. I don't know. I don't know if I'm brave enough to answer the door naked for the Jehovah's Witnesses. We did get some religious people going around the room the other day, going around the neighborhood the other day, proselytizing, asking us if we want to have some tracts, religious tracts or whatever. That was a very sweet old lady, though. I wouldn't have felt good answering the door naked for her. I wouldn't have felt good. Like, she was just a very nice lady. She was very sweet about it. Not judgy at all. Just very nice. Try to see if I can find any other pictures of any of their cars. Lots of pictures of flowers. Lots of pictures of their dogs. They love German Shepherd puppies. My grandparents who are passed. I'd love to find a picture of the garage. Maybe I could find a picture that I took of their garage. That would probably be a better idea, huh? Me finding a picture of their garage that I took when I was on vacation. That would be smart. Maybe it's late and that's why I'm not smart right now. Well, you got to see the picture of me dancing with my wife on our wedding. Let's see. Runner Cruise, Disney, Valor, Food and Wine, Breakaway, Cover, Comic-Con, Woodlands, Dallas, Los Angeles. There we go, Los Angeles. That should be it. That should be where I potentially took a picture of everything. Did I only get 2 pictures? Are you serious? There's one with my 2 kids. There's one of his cars. And there's another one of his cars. Maybe she added those pictures and I added other pictures later. I don't know. We'll see. I should use this one more often. Because of course I found that one. Of course, this is the time of the show where we're just goofing off for the last few minutes before I decide to go. Where else? I want to find a picture of the house. I think I've moved past the picture of the house. I think we're now at Disneyland. Well, there's Nakatomi Plaza. That was funny. We were driving down the highway, and it didn't even occur to me didn't even occur to me until we're driving down the highway and I find there's a sign that says Pomona, and I saw the sign that says Pomona and I was like, Pomona, Die Hard. For some reason I remember the line from Die Hard. I'm like, we need to go to Nakatomi Plaza. And so we found how to get to Nakatomi Plaza and we took a picture and I was very excited that I got to take a picture. I got to take a picture both with Nakatomi Plaza in the background, and I got to take a picture from like the little loop in front of Nakatomi Plaza. It was all very awesome. And I got a picture of Bruce Willis's star as well in front of the Chinese theater. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I have any other good pictures. Yeah, Aaron, you have your new job to take care of, I guess. I'm probably going to end the podcast in a second anyway. So, anyway. Is that a motel now? I thought it was just a regular office building. Anywho. So, yeah, let's go ahead and call it a break for the day. I have some stuff to do before I go to bed. So, I'll probably make a new Fat Man Rant sometime this weekend. I'll be on Twitch tomorrow, nerdydan.com, 8 p.m. Central. I'll probably have a wrestling-themed video sometime tomorrow night or Friday morning. I'll schedule it to launch Friday morning if you're interested in a wrestling video. I gotta work sometime on one of these two videos that I want to do for Liberal Dan Radio. I might have one of Louisiana's legislators to talk about the Louisiana session next Wednesday, but the topic should be about like important issues like abortion and stuff like that and trans issues. So it should be of national importance, even though there are of local Louisiana issues as well. So, but I do want to thank everybody for being on. Appreciate you all for listening and for showing me the love, especially after what I talked about today. Appreciate again every one of y'all for joining, showing your support. Thanks for the Venmo support as well. Thanks for the likes. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. Make sure to watch the videos. Share the new Fat Man Rants that I have out there. Share other videos too. Again, next week, 8 p.m. Central. Liberal Dan Radio on YouTube. Also nerdydan.com on YouTube and nerdydan.com on Twitch. Until next week, this is Dan Zinnerman for Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left. That's right.